Earnestly podcast coming to you on March 30th, 2021. Special birthday shout out to my cousin Brooke. She turns 40. She is now, I'm no longer, as of today, the only Christian grandchild to cross 40. She's now crossed that bridge. Let's get old. So happy birthday to my cousin Brooke. Love you very much. Hope you're enjoying your vacation and all of that. So anyway, folks, what's up? It's been a couple days since we did a podcast together. If you're on YouTube, of course, why this podcast you can find on YouTube. Again, not every episode is recorded for video, but every episode is on YouTube. This one will be on YouTube, and you can see I shave my head and look really shiny here. But you'll probably notice that once again, my backdrop is still not quite, done. And we did try today to put a green screen in here option, and unfortunately that did not work out. So we're trying other options here. We'll see how it goes. But anyway, like I said, this podcast you can subscribe to on any podcast catcher, such as the following: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the new revamped Stitcher Radio, which I have to check it out because I've been hearing that they revamped it, made it even more modernized. Like I said, YouTube as well too, Amazon Music as well too. So, a couple things I got on my chest here today on the solo podcast, which I'm looking forward to recording today. So I'm really happy we get this in. This week, we begin April in about 2 days as it's recording. This is a very busy week for my family, as you guys know. My wedding anniversary is in a few days. We hit 10 years on Friday this week. Then you have the day after that, my son, Logan, my youngest son, turns 4 years old. And then 4 days later, my oldest son, Eli, turns 8. So this next... not so much now, but as we get to the weekend, it's going to be very active and I wouldn't say chaotic. I don't like to really over embellish what's going on because we tend to keep things for the most part simple, but prepared for any chaotic events. But we got a lot going on, and this year is a landmark anniversary for my wife and I. We have no plans at this time. I'm doing anything. We still dedicated this weekend to the kids. We'll hopefully get to do something at some point next month or so. We'll see how that goes. But 10 years is a big mark, But the divorce rate being so high as it is, Now I can't really assume, all those divorce rates, how many have made it at least double digits. I don't know. I haven't seen the stats on that. But we've made this far. 10 years married, 15 years together this July. So it's an accomplishment. It really is. It's hard, especially now in the last year with the pandemic too. A lot of challenges, and I gotta tell you, one of the things that probably is gonna be challenging is sustaining marriages, sustaining relationships. Because everything is awkward. Everything is, touch and go. Everything is stressful. So you got to make sure your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed, all that. You got to make sure the kids are okay. Make sure the mental health is good. We've, like I said, I'm not gonna lie to you. There's been some moments in this pandemic that's been challenging for us as a family, without question. We've had some challenges here, but we've always, always. I think one of the things my wife and I think I'm hoping to convince her to do a podcast with me this week to reflect. But I'll say this much: one of the really good things about our marriage, I will say, is that. A lot of people complain about how their marriages, one of the biggest problems it have is communication. That's something we don't struggle with at all. In fact, one can argue, and you can ask many of our friends and family that know us well and how we operate for the last 15 years, that communication is the least of our problems. In fact, one can argue we kind of almost over communicate. We're one of those couples that if there are issues, if someone has an issue with someone, they're going to know about it. If my wife has a problem with me, if she thinks things aren't doing well, she's not going to hold back and just not say anything. She's going to tell me, and vice versa. I'm probably a little more laid back with that. I'm not gonna say it's a guy thing, but sometimes I tend to just whatever, go with the flow, whatever. But I still do open my mouth. If I have problems, I'm gonna open my mouth. My wife, Lauren, definitely opens her mouth when it's an issue, and I appreciate that because prior to being with her, my past relationships, they, past girlfriends, they sometimes that would be a problem. Like I'll say how's everything's going, and they say, oh, it's cool, no, it's fine, and then deep down there are things going on, and as evidence of what happened toward the end of our relationships, so that's something I've always appreciated with my wife, is that at least she communicates to a fault. I will say to a fault. But yeah, this week, not Friday, I'm sorry, it's Saturday, is our 10-year anniversary. So looking forward to see what we can do with that. We're still working and all this, and we got a lot of stuff going. We're trying to figure out things for the kids, because like one of the things about the birthdays is obviously, they're still close, they're fairly close in age, 4 years apart. We try to give them some independence with birthdays. Like we try to do something for Logan on the 4th, and we try to do something to Eli on the 8th. But there are some times where you just can't do that between the work schedules and the school schedules, all that. So like this year, for example, Logan's birthday, falls on Easter on a Sunday. I'm off for work. My wife took off of work. Whereas Eli's birthday, 8-year-old, soon to be 8-year-old, is on a Thursday. And my wife works at doubles on Thursdays. I'm actually off Thursdays as well. So I'm the one that could actually be there, no matter what, for the boys, on the birthdays. But my wife also took some time off of work on Thursday to, maybe go to dinner with him, whatever, something like that, some of that nature. But the point is, we try to make it as independent as possible. Sometimes, like I said, I think this year we would probably have to combine some stuff. I know one thing what happened today. We got Eli's gift. We got him a Nintendo Switch, which he opened today. We gave him the option to open his gift now, open his gift on his birthday, which is 8 days away. He decided to take the option of now, and he got a Switch. He was so happy. We tried to get we had discussed getting this for him in the last year, and then I've had some. I'm a little more conservative. Like he's turning 8. You want to give him a little more responsibilities. One of the things I was concerned about with him is whether he can handle a machine like that and take care of it and not break it. Because look, this shit's not expensive. It's not. It's expensive. It's $300 for the machine, plus you get to get games, plus controllers, all that. So it's not just something that if you break, almost gonna turn around and buy another one. That doesn't work in this house. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. So he has to be prepared to make sure he gets this right. So he got a Switch. Get him to him real early. He's happy. He's very happy. He was playing all evening, the family. So, and another thing too, also for the Switch, it's going to be a family thing also too. So I think one of the things I grew up on video games to some degree. I was never obsessed with it, but I always liked video games. But in the last maybe decade and so, I've kind of come out of that. Even my love for John Madden football, I kind of went by the wayside. I've been more focused. All my extra energy the last decade has been doing this podcast, radio, writing. That's been the things I've been focusing on outside my family life. So video games has never been the things I've actually prioritized at all. But this is something also my wife was saying that we can bond with the family and play some of the games on the Switch. So, but yeah, it's going to be a pretty crazy week in the coming 10 days. So anyway, let's talk about something here. NFL. Just found out today officially that starting this season, the NFL regular season is going to be moving to not the 16 games, it's moving to 17-game season. Now, on this show through the years, I've expressed a lot of opinions about how many games that should be played, and because there was always a threat for the last 10 years that the NFL wanted to go to as high as 18 games, which I was totally against from day one. And it's always gotten some pushback and never got to that point. and now we're getting 17. Now, the trade-off here is that we'll have one less preseason game, which I'm okay with. In fact, I've been one of those people saying that do you really need preseason? Honestly, I've been fighting with people in the media for a long time about the fact that preseason footballs is fake football. And it's some people, some of the NFL football diehards don't like my opinion on that, which is fine, but I feel like it's fake football. It doesn't count. Why would you put risk for players that could get hurt? College football doesn't have a preseason, so why do the NFL need one? You can do that. You can find out who's good, who's not, who's good enough through your training camps. I don't know. That's just my opinion. There's people who agree with me on this topic, and there's people who disagree with me on this topic. So I do have, to be honest with you, I do have a mixed feelings on this move because again, 16 games, a lot of games. I think 17 games, it kind of waters it down a little bit. I was already kind of on the fence about them going to 7 teams in the playoff per conference, watering down in the league, you know what I'm saying? So that's one of my concerns. I'm a little more accepting of it only because of the fact that, yes, you're less than the preseason game. At least if you're going to take away a game, take away one meaningless game and throw in a meaningful game. I get that. I don't know. Maybe I'm softening my view on this situation, on this topic. Am I still going to watch the NFL? Yeah, of course. It doesn't really impact me. Them going to 17 games or whether or not or more or less doesn't impact me. I'm going to watch the game anyway. You know what I'm saying? I'm just looking more so the concern of the players and health and safety and all that stuff. And the numbers don't really bode well for the NFL in terms of, with CTE now we've been learning last decade or so and everything else. Like I said, you want to take all information and bring it in and hopefully it comes something positive out of it. But again, I will admit I've probably softened a little bit on this topic only because if you're going to add more games, at least make the games count. Don't have games that don't count that still risk your players getting hurt. At least they're playing games that count. So, yes, you take away one meaningless game, you throw in a meaningful game. Okay, I can somewhat live with that. I'm still not okay with playing more than 16 games because of the war down factor, because of health, whatever. But you know what? It is what it is. And not only that, I can't get mad because at the end of the day, all of this is collectively bargained. They all collectively bargained. It's the CBA. If the players have a problem with the way things are run, they need to speak up. They need to speak up against DeMaurice Smith. You know what I'm saying? So, again, it's not just the owners are saying, we're going to do this and that's final. This is all collectively bargained. So I can only get so mad. You know what I'm saying? So, it is what it is. Another football thing here quick. The Washington football team, formerly the Redskins, there's rumors that they actually may keep the name Washington football team. I'll be honest with you. I said this on the podcast back last year that it was kind of growing on me. I got laughed at for saying that, but it kind of grew on me. And to be honest with you, if they don't give it an actual name, they say football team, I'm good with that. In fact, with all this cancel culture stuff going on now and everything else with, teams having names that may be offensive, I can see more teams going this route where you don't have names for teams anymore. You just say the Washington Football Club or the Cleveland Baseball Club. I can see this being a thing in the years to come, honestly. Not with every team, but maybe down the road they just take off names and just call it by the city and the club. I don't know. But it might stick. Rumors are that they may keep it that way. We'll see how that goes. Honestly, if they keep it, I'm not mad about it. Honestly, it's grown on me now. WFT. WFT. I'm okay with it. So, what's any other NFL things here? Nah, that's it. All right. NBA buyout talk. NBA trade deadline in the books. I did a little thing last podcast. I talked a little bit about my winners and losers of the trade deadline. One of the things that comes right after the trade deadline is the buyout market. Team players that may have gotten traded but didn't get traded because the contract's too bloated, too big. teams end up working out deals with those said players, and they end up working on a buyout. Couple fairly big names here. Granted, whether or not they're actually good anymore or not, that's another question. But, you have, first off, Marcus Aldridge, who was rumored to go to Miami. Him and San Antonio worked on a buyout agreement last week, right after the trade deadline. He signed to the Nets, the Brooklyn Nets. That's a big move. I mean, again, people are going to say, oh, well, he's not good anymore. Yeah, but again, like Blake Griffin, like I said a couple weeks ago, if he's your fifth or sixth guy and he gives you 8 to 10 points on a team that has Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving, which, by the way, Kevin Durant, we'll see when if he comes back soon. It's been a while. It's impactful. You know what I'm saying? You're not asking LaMarcus Aldridge to be the third guy or the second guy, and he's not even the core guy. But you're asking him to do, you're asking him to just be, provide 8 points a game, 5 rebounds. That's big. That's a big move. Andre Drummond was also another buyout. I can't say casualty because they actually agreed to that. But Andre Drummond was with the Cleveland Cavaliers. They bought him out, and the Lakers signed Drummond. So that's another big move. I mean, he's not really an offensive player. He's mostly a defensive and rebounding guy. He definitely should help with AD when he returns, because AD won't be 100%. I guarantee you that. So he can definitely help with the dirty work on the boards. So the Lakers got better at that. But yeah, buyout market is always fun. It's always fun. All right, some wrestling talk here. NXT, NXT, WWE's third brand. Not quite Raw, SmackDown, but not quite developmental anymore, at least in my eyes. NXT is moving to Tuesdays starting April 13th. NXT has been on Wednesdays for the last 2 years, or almost 2 years, competing with AEW with these lame ass Wednesday Night Wars, who don't mean shit because they're only trading off hundreds of thousands of viewers, barely a million viewers. This ain't definitely ain't the same as it was the Monday Night Wars back in the late 90s. But NXT's moving to Tuesdays. A lot of this has to do with the fact that NBC, USA Network, which is owned by NBC, obviously, they're going to be cutting off the NBC Sports Network later in the year. Hockey will be on USA on those days too, so it makes sense for NXT to move, obviously. So which means all my wrestling is now spread out. I'm going to have Raw Monday, NXT Tuesday, Dynamite, AEW Dynamite Wednesday, SmackDown Friday. Impact, which I don't really watch, is on Thursdays now. Like I said, it's I'm going to watch it still, obviously, no matter what day it is. As I said before on the show, I don't watch any of these shows, not pay-per-view, not including pay-per-views though, but any of the weekly shows I don't watch live anyway. Like in fact, I don't think I can't remember the last time I watched Raw and SmackDown. I mean, I think I watched Raw a couple weeks ago. SmackDown, I watched the highlight. I've been utilizing YouTube a lot too, because Raw's 3 hours long. There's no way in fucking hell I'm watching that. Even the hour and a half Hulu version's a lot for me to keep up with. So I do commit to the Dynamite. Even though I've missed a couple weeks early in the year. NXT have been kind of slipping on the last couple months too also, although the product's still great in my opinion. But, I mean, the movement of Tuesday is not going to impact me in one bit, like I said, because I don't watch these shows live. Maybe I will. Maybe now with it moving, I should watch it live. But, again, they won't have time to do a podcast. Won't have time to do my other, catch up on any of my other content I want to watch. There's a lot of content I want to watch, listen to, and read, and I can't do that with balancing 9 hours of wrestling. I don't want to give it up, but I also need to find a way to, watch this stuff more efficiently. So, anyway. What else? Any other wrestling talk here? There's a couple of wrestling things I wanted to touch on, actually. Oh, yeah. WrestleMania 37 main event is now a triple threat match. It's no longer Roman Reigns and against Edge. As many people predicted, as I almost assumed that Daniel Bryan will be part of the main event. I initially was pissed about it because I wanted to see this Edge and Roman Reigns. And what's the point of winning a Royal Rumble only to have another guy come and, you know, change up the party? Edge earned that spot at Royal Rumble. So why is Daniel Bryan just getting a spot even though he lost to Roman twice? But again, it's Daniel Bryan. It's one of the most talented wrestlers, in-ring performers in the history, not just in recent memory, but in the history of the entire business. So I'm not that mad about it either, because at least it's Daniel Bryan being the third guy. At least he can make this match a little even more interesting. So not terribly mad about it, but it's weird writing, I guess. And you know what? It gives something to do. I think you can do it. Put him in a feud with Sami Zayn. Like, something that's not going to matter. Yeah, I get it, So there's that. Latest podcast recommendations. I've been binging a couple podcasts. I've been back actually mostly on the wrestling tip again, like a lot of the Conrad Thompson related stuff. Mainly, I actually enjoyed recently Will and JR, which is Jim Ross, who's the voice of wrestling, who used to be WWE, now he's AEW. His podcast with Conrad Thompson. They just did an episode on WrestleMania 17. That was really good. I really enjoyed that. Arguably the greatest WrestleMania of all time. That's, of course, the Rock versus Austin Part 2. That's when Austin turns heel with Vince McMahon, which in hindsight, many people believe that was the wrong move to make, especially the fact that that Mania was in Houston, it was in Texas. Austin was still getting cheered, and you didn't want to bury Rock. It was interesting to hear JR's perspective too, because back then too, also not only did he commentate the Mania, he also was still heavily involved in behind the scenes, with talent relations and stuff. And he was against it. He explained that he had to find a way to call Austin and McMahon, even though the crowd was supporting Austin in the end, him doing the Dashley thing in the end, pummeling and Rock with a chair and all that. He still had to find a way to balance and not bury the Rock, who was right at that point a white meat babyface. So again, this is why I love these podcasts too, because you get, especially with the right people like JR and especially Bruce Pritchard, who's obviously one of the executives for many years, one of the main writers. You get to hear the whys and the hows. What made them make the decision? Why did they book this match this way? Why was it done this way? That's the most fascinating part of being a wrestling fan, is hearing the behind the scenes. Because when you're writing TV, and the thing about wrestling too, you're writing TV every week with no pauses. You just keep going, and keep going. There's no season 1 and season 2. There's no break for summer. No, wrestling continues on and on and on. You continuously write TV. So it's fascinating to see why did Vince, why did Pritchard, these guys, why did they disagree with this booking and all that? It's phenomenal. It's really phenomenal. What else? I've also been really enjoying these two podcasts that's on the Volume Network, the newly Colin Cowherd founded network. The Colin Cowherd podcast, of course. Now this is separate from his actual radio show on Fox Sports. The Herd. He has his own thing now. He does his show 3 times a week. He brings on guests with a little bit and sprinkles a little bit of opinions on the topic of the day, the time. I've been really enjoying that show. Honestly, I've been listening to that show more than The Herd. Honestly, so that's really cool. And then Oral Sessions, which is hosted by Renee Paquette, formerly Renee Young at WE. She has her own show on the network as well too, and she does like at least twice a week interviews with mainly wrestlers, and she'll have some other, I'm sure actors, whatever, people in pop culture, but she's been mainly getting wrestlers on the show. What's fascinating about her show too is, even though she's no longer in WE, she's obviously getting AEW guys because she's married to Jon Moxley, who, by the way, soon have their first child very soon. But also she's still getting WWE wrestlers on her show too. Like, she just did a show with Bayley about 2 days ago. She did interviews with Paul White, who just left AEW to AEW. Christian Cage, who just left the same thing, WWE to AEW. A couple other. You had the Miz on a couple weeks ago. She had Big E on, so she's still getting top level talent from both companies, even though she's not part of WWE anymore. That's actually pretty good stuff. Actually, I don't know if you heard that. I burped. Anyway, so yeah, I'm enjoying her podcast. And a lot of the episodes too on her podcast aren't very professionally done. Like, it seems like she just has a computer there or a little mic there, and they just talk and converse with each other, which I actually kind of like. I appreciate that, because not every podcast has to be this overly big production and all that. Let's let it rip. There's some shows on this I've done here. You've heard some of the podcasts I've done here in the past where some shows I'm on the road just talking, on my phone, and just I feel compelled in the moment to say what I want to say. Sometimes the content's more important than the quality, So, but I've been really enjoying her show too, especially. Like I said, I've been really enjoying wrestling podcasts more and more and more. Not just the weeklies I listen to. Like, I listen to Cheap Heat, listen to my guys, of course. My guy Big Jim was in the podcast just 2 days ago doing the watch along with me, 3 Count Thursday, and a couple others, popular podcasts as well too out there. The Masked Man Show with David Shoemaker is one of my favorites. But even like I said, the Conrad Thompson podcasts. You have, of course, this stuff with the current people. I still listen to Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast too, although he hasn't done a new show in a while. So they've been releasing the old episodes and all that. But yeah, like I've kind of taken a step back on the political stuff recently, because things, like I said, tone down the volume a little bit. Still have an ear out what's going on, but I'm trying to I'm trying not to get stressed out as much anymore, and that obviously adds more stress to me sometimes. Even some of the sports podcasts. Like, I don't, like, with ESPN, for example, the only person, not a Dan Le Batard is gone from ESPN. The only person at ESPN I listen to on a daily basis who I even care to be invested into is Bomani Jones. I mean, who happens to be my favorite guy in all sports. My favorite media personality, probably in media in general. So, yeah. And his show's now 3 times a week now, which is cool. But, yeah. But wrestling podcast has been my thing, man. I've been really enjoying it. Really enjoying all the wrestling podcasts out there. Continuing the great content. Even some of those independent ones. Like, I just discovered last week the Black Wrestling podcast. Very urban. The language is off the rails. I love it. I fucking love it. It's great. I know. It's amazing how pro wrestling is still such a big thing. And I got getting back into it 2 years ago. It's still a big deal. It's crazy. So, anyway, last topic before I go. Today was the second day of the Derek Chauvin trial. Of course, if you don't know who Derek Chauvin is, I mean, lived on a rock. Derek Chauvin is the disgraced Minnesota cop who killed George Floyd with his knee on his neck last May. I can't believe it's almost a year since that happened. I've been watching it in detail. I've been listening to this. I've just been checking in on reports and all that. Even trying to avoid following the media both ways, left and right wing, because even with this shit, even though it's clear that he murdered him out there, that there's still agendas being presented here from the media. Not all, but many on both sides. I was talking to my wife about this earlier, and I'll say this much: if for some reason Derek Chauvin gets off on this, is found not guilty, I gotta tell you, if he's found not guilty, I shudder to think what this country will go through. The amount of riots. And people say, it's on video. There's no way you'd be found not guilty. Oh, yeah, but Fernando Castile, was on video getting shot by a cop, and still the cop got off. George Zimmerman still got off. I mean, there's countless people who have gotten murdered, minorities got murdered, and yet the person, the policeman, and not all cops are bad, obviously. I'm friends with a lot of cops. They have a fucking hard job. I fucking pray for those guys all the time. But there are bad apples too. And we got to call out the bad apples as well too. You know? And George Floyd was murdered. It's on video. I don't know how more clear you can be about that. Anything less than a conviction to me, honestly, it's going to be a disaster. I shudder to think what's going to happen in this country. We're already stressed because of COVID. Obviously, a lot of the racial undertones going on in this country, not just with blacks, now with the Asians now too. And, you know, we just came out of a very polarizing election, and there's still a lot of discourse that is not positive involved in that. I just hope the right thing is done here. Because, again, I think there'll be a lot of riots across this country to the which we've never seen before. I hope not. I pray not. And I'll tell you what, this trial is really, personally for me, is testing my faith in God. It really is. Which I'll talk about in the future, because I actually plan on doing an episode about my faith and some of the things I've been going through, even recently, but especially the last 10 years. So, it's a lot. So I don't mean to end the show on a down note, but anyway, I'll hopefully get this backdrop fixed soon. Maybe green screen, we'll see. But I'm on Twitter, though. You can follow me. Maybe you can converse with me. Like I said, we're trying to build a community here. You know, we don't talk only sports here. We talk pop culture. We talk life. Looking forward to the episodes in the coming weeks. I plan, especially looking forward to that. But yeah, I'm on Twitter at EJChristian7. Earnestly Media, of course. Earnestly.net website. Do a little bit of writing this week. We'll see what happens where that goes. Of course, Earnestly Media on all the socials. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, especially YouTube. Check out the YouTube, guys. Not only do we have full episodes of this show and my wrestling podcast, Take 3 Wrestling Podcast, which, by the way, a lot going on with that. Let's go weeks. We'll be doing WrestleMania Jeopardy on Thursday with two special guests on the show, and then next week WrestleMania preview, and then we're gonna have probably because Mike and Joe, the guys, my co-hosts, of course, on the show, they're attending WrestleMania in a week and a half. And we are hopefully planning some reaction podcasts. If not me involved with them, definitely those two. They'll be doing some reaction podcasts. Hopefully, send me the files, and I'll take care of the rest, doing production, all that. So we got a lot of things going on in Speaker Media. Just check it out, of course. Like I said, Speaker Media on all the socials. But until then, we'll talk soon. Stay up. And until next podcast. Later.